Hey, how's it going, Noah?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I was thinking about yesterday's conversation, and I kind of talked all about this random stuff, like the first coding I did,
Oh
and we
yeah.
never really threw it back to you for you to introduce yourself. Want to take a couple minutes or
Oh, sure.
a
Well,
couple
yeah.
seconds?
Well, we'll keep it brief. The backgrounds are quite similar.
Mhm.
Like you, I started in this industry. Well, for me, it was 1995 doing web programming when there was barely a web to program on. Self-taught degree in music, but just kind of rolled with it along the way, learned whatever I could, was always interested in learning something new. And that meant I had a lot of breadth, but not a lot of depth.
Hmm.
And then met some mentors along the years, including yourself. Learned to get a little bit deeper in certain areas. I did the .NET
Yeah.
Microsoft thing for quite a long time,
Mhm.
but was always interested in other stuff, and that not just in the technology world, but in product, in project management, in UX design, anything I could learn a little bit about. I
Yeah.
was interested in, and that was great because I had this nice holistic view of what it meant to successfully deliver outcomes through technology, which is kind of the purpose of my
Mhm.
business now today. So yeah, that's a pretty fun journey to have been on.
Yeah, that sounds great. I really appreciate, and we've said this quite a lot. Like we're agnostic when it comes to technology and the
Yeah.
solutions, right? And what's coming up a lot today, it seems, is Gen AI and AGI, right? Like our customers tend
I
to
don't know what that
come.
is. What is Jenna?
You know, you
Yeah,
hear it's so it seems that like a lot of companies, a lot of our clients come and they say, I need to jump on this bandwagon.
right. Yes, they
I
do.
need I need Gen AI as my solution. And this comes around all the time since we started.
It does.
Customers coming to us with solutions rather than leading with, I have this problem, I have this opportunity. How can we seize the opportunity? How can we fix this problem?
Right.
And what we do is here we want to hear the customer out, right? We want to understand what's at the core of this. Why are we meeting? And you told a great story yesterday about the Vegas casino and 11 days and all these things. I was
Yeah.
wondering, as I'm mentioning this, does anything come to mind for you on what we've done in the past?
Yeah, it was a while ago, but it's exactly what you're describing, where in this case, the customer had a working Android app, a custom app that they had
Mm,
built partly in-house, partly with consultants. And the management decided it was time to replace it. So they
mhm.
wanted to look at a bunch of different vendors who were kind of in
Yeah.
the space of what they were doing. It's like a mobile check-in app for the iPad that you'd have different people carrying around and checking in users who
Hmm.
are visiting places. And they thought that was the solution. Like there is another vendor out there who has exactly the app we need.
Right.
And I was at a point in my career where I just kind of thought, okay, well, they know more about their space than I do, so I'm sure that's what they need.
Yes.
So I went to the first meeting where they had gathered, which this is pretty amazing, all the salespeople in the organization. I think 30 people
Wow.
in the sales org, plus the CTO, CIO, other stakeholders. So it was really the right audience and a little
Yes.
intimidating to be in that room and to talk about, all right, I'm here to lead this vendor analysis. We're going to find you a replacement. But something told me I just needed to ask how things were going with the current app. So
Sure.
I started asking questions. Hey, tell me what's going great with the current app, what's not going so well. And
Hmm.
they had some very specific but pretty minor gripes about functionality. When I choose this item in the drop down, it says this, but it really should say this because that makes more sense for how we're trying
Okay.
to engage our
Right.
customers. I was like, okay, took a note about that, heard three or four more typical or similar kinds of
Yes.
problems with the app. And I kind of thought, wait a minute. So besides those things, how is the app? And the general consensus was, oh, the app's great. We love it. And does it help you do your job better? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. It just got a couple of annoyances, but yeah, if those were fixed,
Hmm.
problem solved. So we
Sure.
went from a pretty high cost, let's do a vendor analysis
Hmm.
of five or six different vendors. They parade in, they present their stuff, we do a big detailed assessment. Great, we've done that before. To we have a working app that needs about 15 to 20 hours worth of bug fixing.
Hmm.
And, so that was just, we didn't sell them something they didn't need, but we had to dig into those pain points to
Hmm.
recognize that. Delivered that, and then it turned into more features, more customization. So we ended up making the same amount of money and
Hmm.
probably more from what was originally there. So from our perspective, it wasn't like we were giving away business, and we were helping them because they had a working product. So
Right.
I think that's a really interesting story for what you're talking about. But I'm curious from your side how you've seen that change since that time.
Hmm. Well, I do want to just comment on this. Right. It really sounded like it shifted from a full rewrite and they're just in a super bad spot. And how do we get them back up to baseline to let's put our time and energy into enhancing their system. How do
Yep,
we make them even more efficient, right? Like that's the name of
exactly.
the game. Like, wow, awesome. That was that was a pretty special time. Um, I, what really resonated with me from what you just mentioned is around doing that detailed assessment. Like
Yeah.
I really like having those meetings like you just mentioned and having an opportunity to say they say, hey, I want to have technology A and we want to rewrite this entire thing. And you ask why. And you hear their answer and why again. And you hear the answer until you get to that root cause. And then you start understanding like where do you really want to be in 3 months, 6 months, a year from now, which is super cool. And then you determine that there probably is something else a little bit that you need to understand better, right? Like, okay, you get all those stakeholders in the room. That's fantastic. But what are they saying and what aren't they saying? And that's where getting into that assessment that you mentioned, doing the interviews with individuals, digging in and understanding what is the tech and how people are using, yeah, what are the processes looking like? What's the pain point? What are those? There's probably like three things you always talk about, right? It's, what are your pain points? What are your pet peeves? What's really working? And you start putting together this story that you can then put back against what you've been learning all along. And so, 2, 4, 6 weeks together, really understanding what you're dealing with, that current state, gets you to really understand like what that future system can look like, which provides great value.
Well, and I think extending on that idea, I'm hearing the theme of once again, it's all about people. You have to talk to these
Mhm.
people to
Yeah.
understand what those pain points, frustrations, pet peeves are and what's working. And really, the best way to do that, as we've both seen with multiple customers, is to spend a day in their shoes, ideally sitting
Mm.
next to them, shadowing what they're doing,
Mhm.
listening to where they get stuck on something and taking notes to think, oh, yeah, we could do this way more efficiently. And
Right.
maybe in a case like that, Gen AI is a solution, or there's automation you
That's
could
right.
do, but we're not driving it from the solution. We're seeing what the problems are and recognizing
Mhm.
there's ways to make them more efficient. You'll
Mhm.
also see people in those situations, they've developed some incredible, clever workarounds because they have to get their job done,
Right.
even if it's something that is you don't even think about it anymore, where you're trying to copy something from one program into another and the formatting gets messed up. So
Mhm.
you have something you use in the middle to strip the formatting from the first thing so that when you paste it
Mhm.
into the second thing, it goes back to what you expect, right? We all do these little workarounds
Right.
for the things we run into because we've learned to do it so fast that we don't even
Mhm.
recognize, it's worth taking a little bit of time to do an assessment and see if there's a better way.
That's right. That's right. Shadow IT, right? It's all
Yeah.
those little things that people are doing behind the scenes to
Yep.
make, keep the lights on. Uh, I wonder now, just if there's opportunities now to fast forward any of this, because sometimes the assessments, they could take a good amount of time. They pay off in the long run, but it's all about providing value as soon as possible, right? And if you spend that 6, 8 weeks on an assessment, you're not necessarily delivering anything other than a solid understanding. This is your roadmap going forward. This is what it's going to cost. This is the team. All of that planning is tied in, and then you mobilize your teams, and then you start doing the work. And that takes a little bit of while to get off the ground.
Yep.
I To fast forward that assessment, any thoughts on that? How do you get from the
Yeah.
initial meeting to got it, let's go?
Well, I think you and I have both experienced, and many people have in our industry, there are ways to use AI for ourselves
Mhm.
effectively to accelerate things. And you
Yeah.
always have to be a really good critic of anything you get back from AI. Read it carefully, even question it about its own generated content,
Mhm.
but it can shorten the time frame for certain assessments if you really have thought about framing, if you've really had the conversations with people, if you have that core understanding of how a business works from seeing people do the work at the business, then you can take something that you've got a nice skeleton of, have an AI conversation about it, press
Mm.
on it, and it can give you some well-formatted content that's a launching point for accelerating the rest of the assessment,
Mhm.
which does have to be hands-on, has to be very human. You have to have those phone calls or
Right.
in-person meetings to really understand it. But yeah, I think there's some shortcuts because AI makes some things a little faster and easier.
Mhm.
How about you? What
Yeah,
have you
well,
found?
I just along the lines of AI, I was just recently hearing about how a lot of the larger consultant firms, what they've started to do is because they are doing these interviews, and sometimes you've got to go in and talk to dozens of stakeholders, right? To get the big story, they're leveraging AI. So AI now on the
Right.
stakeholders' time are being interviewed by agents, right? And so they're able to gather and aggregate all that information pretty quickly
Yeah.
and then able to provide recommendations and the path forward. It's pretty exciting. I'm not convinced it helps with the it's all about people. Like
Right.
it's really
Yeah.
it's all about a machine and people, but it gets that fast forward along with the assessment, hopefully, and then there's a human in the loop towards the end where they're like, all right, I've got all the data, and now I can, because I understand people, come together with a really great plan and then vet that with others. So I feel like it's really a decent way to go about things because we don't scale, right? Like if it's me,
Yeah.
I can
That's
only
right.
host so many meetings every day. So why not? I think that helps things out. I like the idea too about, you know, delivering value iteratively, right? You define that MVP. You're really transparent along the way. A lot of those agile mindset things, right? There was
Yeah.
a time when we do the assessment and then we're building out an entire spec in great detail right from the get-go, right? Before you start writing a line of code or prototyping. And prototyping, we know, can be super rapid now. It's fantastic. But I know we have some pretty awesome stories around how much time you can sink into putting together some requirements up front. Yeah.
And I do think there are still organizations that think and operate that way if they
Hmm.
haven't worked with software companies, haven't seen agile methodologies work
Right.
in a project setting. And sure, there's many examples. One that comes to mind is joining a project that was about 9 months into its requirements phase, very waterfall, old school, huge
Hmm.
project approach. And they had built out this 300-page requirements document. And there was a team just to maintain that document. And it got to the point where it was so unwieldy at 300 pages, they didn't want to make changes to the core document. So they just started referencing changes in an Excel document that they embedded into the Word document. So, so you would read the Word document, you have to read it
Yeah,
online because you couldn't print
sure,
it out. You'd click
sure.
and it would launch an Excel sheet
Yeah.
with page numbers and here's what changed, here's what's wrong.
Hmm.
And then there'd be another Word document embedded in the cell in Excel for details about that change,
Right.
which now it just became impossible to even follow the
Hmm.
requirements.
Yeah.
So what happened in that case, and so often happens, is it moved to the design phase. We started working on it, and within a month, we were completely off the requirements because the
Hmm.
priorities had shifted after a year of deciding this is what we need to do, and it wasn't at all what they needed to do. You just can't think ahead. You have to do that iteratively, and
Hmm.
and you have to. We were talking about this earlier too. You have to find ways to measure when you're going to be successful. We were talking about this
Hmm.
before too, or I think maybe even the previous video. How do you measure this stuff? How do you know it's working? You and I just recently did an assessment, and there was a big focus on how do we know it's working? And we had to
Yes.
put in some real measurements, which can be
Hmm.
tricky when you don't have a baseline. You have to establish that baseline measurement.
Right.
Go look against it later to see did we improve on this? Is
Hmm.
this still an important metric for us to be considering? So that's
Sure.
always been fascinating to track.
Yeah, I love that. It really is about understanding the problem and then defining the impact, right? What
Yeah,
are you getting on the other end of this? And it doesn't have to be right at the very end, the impact, right? What's the impact along the way, the value that you're providing right away? How do you know that this was a solid investment? Getting folks to come in, look at your systems and make those improvements. So yeah, that's a miss a lot of times. I'll raise my hand. I think I had time to learn, ask what is the problem, and then it's the next thing I think that was learned was
yeah.
how do you know that the problem has been addressed, right? We grow, we learn these things.
Well, you're
Uh,
reminding me about something that just recently happened for a customer where there was duplicate data entry because there was one system that was automatically populated by a customer, but it wasn't
yes,
connected to the system where the team was going to do its work. So there was
sure.
a guy who was spending 14 hours a week duplicate entering a bunch of
Sure,
data into another
sure.
system.
Yes.
And they actually knew the solution in this case. There were really strong technical people at the company suggested, can we just hook into an API, take the data that's coming in from the
Sure.
customer and automatically push it to this system? Because we're talking about hundreds of items that need to be entered on a weekly basis.
Wow.
Took an incredible amount of time. And obviously, no matter how good you are, you're probably going to miss some things. You're going to mistype. There's going to be errors along the way. But with
Yes.
the API connection, not really an issue. You're just moving data from one system to another. So a
Hmm.
really simple project that saved this one person 14 hours per week,
Hmm.
which he can now focus on his core job and not data entry. Those are the stories I love because they're really simple to understand, but it gets at exactly the root of what you're talking about.
Hmm. I love this and maybe taking it full circle back to AI, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times it's like, what are those repetitive tasks that you're doing day in, day out? Something that AI can do to really just free up your time to do other things. And I'm not suggesting that the solution to that problem was a Gen AI or an AI solution, but it gets people hopefully now at least thinking about things that some problems that they can solve. Maybe even consider that, this is a problem. spending 14, 16 hours a week doing something might not have recognized it as a problem until it's like, oh, wait, maybe can an agent help me with this?
Yep,
No, no. Let's have a conversation. Let's figure it out. Ended up in this case, it's an API. Okay. Sweet.
that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Getting people thinking. I
Yeah,
don't know.
and you're just helping me realize that when we finish up this video, first thing I'm going to do is take the transcript, drop it into an AI engine, and have it give
Mhm.
me a nice description that I can use on YouTube to summarize it because I don't need to spend that time. And we'll
Yes.
review it. We'll make sure it's right, but it'll help us.
Right. I think we should get to it.
Sounds good. Thanks,
Okay.
Ben.
Yeah. Thanks for talking. See ya.
Talk to you soon.